Meeting is being recorded.
네. 안녕하십니까. 2020 TV조선 국제화상 컨퍼런스에 참석해 주신 여러분께 깊은 감사드립니다. 저는 이번 포럼 사회를 맡은 이주호입니다. 본 컨퍼런스의 주제는 AI e-러닝 교육의 패러다임을 바꾸다입니다. 코로나 바이러스 팬데믹으로 대규모 회의가 불가능한 상태에서 해외 최고 전문가들을 화상으로 실시간 연결해서 국내 석학들과 원격으로 토론회를 펼칩니다. 뿐만 아니라 200여 명의 관객들이 접속해서 질문을 던질 예정입니다. 이후 컨퍼런스는 모두 영어로 진행하도록 하겠습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2020 TV조선 Forum. I'm Juho Lee, Chairperson of Education Commission Asia and former Minister of Education, Science and Technology in South Korea. TV조선 and Education Commission Asia are welcoming distinguished speakers from around the world and in Korea to join this conference on a paradigm shift in education through AI and online learning platforms. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, instead of the traditional method of hosting forums, we'll have a live streaming conference connecting prominent speakers from abroad to leaders and experts as well as audience members in Korea. We particularly thank our overseas speakers who are participating at such a late hour due to the time difference. This specially designed global seminar will serve as an opportunity to discuss how technology-driven disruptive innovation in education can change the way we learn and how we teach. As our current learning model is becoming rapidly antiquated and far outdated, we should collaborate nationally and globally to explore new ways of learning and considering a paradigm shift in education by embracing new pedagogies and cutting-edge edtech, such as AI-assisted personalized learning and e-learning through learning platforms. More importantly, I hope that the field of edtech can enhance our humanness, as every teacher is radically relieved from the burden of delivering content knowledge, and every student can enjoy wider access to human connections and interesting challenges. I expect that the right balance between high touch and high tech in education can ensure that every child is healthy, creative, and energized. One interesting angle of today's conference amid the coronavirus pandemic, which has forced more than 1 billion children and youth to stay away from schools and universities, is asking whether and to what extent this terrible crisis could accelerate the paradigm shift in education, as more and more students and teachers are forced to turn to online education and other edutech tools. This 5.5-hour conference is comprised of 3 parts. The first session is on AI in education. The second is on edutech as game changer. And the third on disruptive innovation in education. In addition, we'll have a keynote speech by former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon between the first and second sessions. I myself am very much thrilled to listen to such great speakers and distinguished discussants on a very timely and important topic in education. Okay, let us start session 1 on AI in education. The speaker for this session is Dr. Wayne Holmes, principal researcher at Nesta in the UK. He is a co-author of the book, Artificial Intelligence in Education, Premises and Implications for Teaching and Learning. Dr. Wayne Holmes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your kind invitation to join this conference today. I'm very sorry that I'm not able to be there in person. This virus has gotten particularly bad in the UK now. All shops and offices are now shut in the UK, and of particular importance for this conference, from 2 days ago, all schools and universities have also been shut, and we don't know when they will reopen. So as has been mentioned, my talk this evening, or sorry, this morning for you, is on the application of artificial intelligence in education, the promise and implications for teaching and learning. If you will bear with me 1 second, and I will shift across to my presentation. To begin with, there have been attempts to automate aspects of teaching and learning since the 1920s and the 1950s. What we'd recognize as AI in education today, or AI, there have been attempts to automate aspects of teaching and learning for around since the 1920s and 1950s. Since today, AI Ed is big business, and there are already multi-million-dollar company funded startups around the world, such as Squirrel AI in China and Carnegie Learning in the US. But it's also the big players. Amazon, Google, Facebook, and others have all invested millions of dollars to develop AI Ed products. By 2024, the market is predicted to become worth almost $6 billion. However, the reality is that our AI technologies are still not that common in classrooms today. In any case, rather than being innovative or changing the way that we teach and learn, artificial intelligence in education often replicates existing practices, and in particular, existing educational myths. It might also have some unintended consequences that we need to be clear about. There are 3 ways in which AI impacts on education. To begin with, we have learning with AI, that's using AI technologies to support teaching and learning. Then we have learning about AI. In other words, teaching students how AI works. And thirdly, we have what might be called learning for AI. In turn, learning with AI has 3 different aspects. First, student-facing AI. In other words, AI technologies that have been designed to support students directly. Then we have teacher-facing AI. AI technologies designed to support teachers. And thirdly, system-facing AI. Learning about AI, on the other hand, can include teaching young people about AI in schools, teaching teachers about AI so they can share that, and training tomorrow's AI engineers. Finally, learning for AI is about helping all citizens to understand the implications of AI for their daily lives, with issues such as bias, transparency, and the impact of AI on jobs. In this presentation, my focus is on learning with AI Ed, and I will begin with system-facing AI. The reality is that AI technologies are being developed to support many aspects of school administration, including admissions, timetabling, learning management, attendance, and recording and predicting which students are at risk of failure. However, most research and development has been on student-facing AI Ed. There are many different types. To begin with, we have the so-called intelligent tutoring systems. The list on the right names just some of the commercial examples I've come across over the past few months, and I'm adding to this list all the time. The example we see is Mathia from Carnegie Learning in the US. Intelligent tutoring systems work by presenting their students with some information, perhaps an exercise or a quiz, and it monitors the student's response. How the student responds determines the next set of information that the system presents. In this way, the system adapts the information given according to the student's individual capabilities, strengths, and weaknesses. Each student in this way gets their own personalized pathway through the learning materials. The second example, AI Ed, are dialogue-based tutoring systems. These engage the student in a conversation, spoken or typed, leading the student through guidance and questions towards an understanding of the material the system wants the student to learn. A third example are exploratory learning environments. You'll notice on the right, all of the examples are in italics. That's because all of these are still in the research labs. The example on the screen is Fractions Lab. In this application, the students are given a task about fractions and some tools that they can use to respond. But we know that in an exploratory learning environment, students typically will get lost very easily. So in this tool, the AI gives automated feedback, guiding the student and helping them work their way through the materials. Our next example, AI Ed, is automatic writing evaluation. Many of these systems, such as eRater, automatically, summatively assess a piece of writing. For example, if you're applying to study in an American university. On the other hand, tools like the one on the screen, which is called Open Essayist, gives the student formative support. The student uploads their assignment before they submit it for final marking, and the system will give them feedback and suggestions as to how it can be improved. Then we have learning network orchestrators. This particular example is from China. The students working in their ordinary classrooms might come out and think, well, I need to find out a little bit more about what I was studying in class, something I didn't understand. This system has an app on the phone that the students can use to connect with human tutors. Use the tutor in the same way they might use each tutor being already assessed by other students. Then they have 10 to 15 minutes of one-to-one tuition. So here the AI is quite simple. It's connecting the students with the human tutors. A final example is language learning. Language learning apps like these, this one is Alea, use AI in many different ways. For example, to check the student's pronunciation is accurate. So in addition to those existing applications, what other student-facing AI Ed possibilities are there? To begin with, what about collaborative learning? As educators, we all know that collaborative learning can be especially powerful. But we also know it can be very difficult to organize and make work effectively. So what about automatic support? For example, organizing groups for collaborative learning can take 10 or 15 minutes of a teacher's time. Why can't we have AI Ed that suggests the groups for the teacher, and the teacher can then change the groups around as they see fit? This could save the teacher a great deal of time while keeping them in full control. And then there's continuous assessment. Mostly in education, we have to prepare our students to pass examinations. But we all know that those examinations are pretty superficial. What about using AI to support continuous assessments on an ongoing basis, perhaps supported by blockchain technologies? And what about AI learning companions? All of our students carry with them their phones. Couldn't we have an AI tool on those phones that supports the students with everything they want to know, supporting them with their choices of what they study, when they should be in certain places, and suggestions of what they might look at next? So that was student-facing AI Ed. What about my next category, teacher-facing AI Ed? Let's look at some examples. The problem is I haven't actually been able to find any current examples of genuine teacher-facing AI Ed. So let's think about the possibilities. What future possibilities are there? To begin with, there's student forum monitoring, automatically responding to standard student questions like, when do I have to hand in this assignment? And allowing the teachers to concentrate on more complex issues. And what about AI teaching assistants, working on a mobile phone or a tablet that could augment what the teachers are doing, giving them instant access to information about their students on the topic that they're discussing? In a sense, this AI could turn teachers into super teachers. What I'm now going to do is think about the implications of artificial intelligence. To think about the implications, I want to start with Facebook. As I mentioned, Facebook had started to develop AI tools for use in education. And here's the reaction for some students. It severely damaged our education, and that's why we walked out in protest. You might think that's an overreaction, but it raises several questions that we should consider carefully. In fact, wherever there is discussion of the ethics of AI applied in education, it almost always starts with the ethics of data, with questions like what data is being collected, is the data private, has there been genuine consent, what proxies are being used, and so on. Questions then move on to the algorithms, the computation, with questions like how do we prevent biases, how do we guard against mistakes, how do we protect against unintended consequences, how do we humans stay in control? Now, these questions around the data and algorithms are absolutely fundamental. But here, we're talking about the application of AI in education. So what about the ethics of education, such as self-fulfilling teacher expectations, resource allocations, gender and ethnic biases, behaviour and discipline, accuracy and validity of assessments, a whole range of different questions that we think about very often when we're considering the world of education. So we need to think about the education, we need to think about the big data, and we need to think about the algorithms and the computation. But what about the overlaps? Well, we have the ethics of data using AI. We also have the ethics of learning analytics, the data that's used in education, and the ethics of algorithms in education, which is itself only just beginning to be questioned. But what about when these three areas overlap? What occurs there? This is something that we've not really thought through a great deal. I'm now going to mention some example ethical issues that AI needs to address. To begin with, is AI designed to replace or augment teachers? I'm quite confident that most AI developers are not aiming to replace teachers. But by automating teacher tasks such as guidance or marking, a possible unintended consequence is that teachers will ultimately be replaced by automated systems, and teachers will be relegated to being nothing more than classroom managers. Then again, for some companies, maybe that's the real intention. In any case, at the very least, as we saw with the Facebook example, these systems can get in the way of the human relationships at the core of teaching and learning. And what about surveillance? Is this really how we want our classrooms to be, where the students are being consistently monitored all the time as they engage with the intelligent tutoring systems? In this example from China, the classroom has cameras watching the students' faces all the time. The system identifies 7 emotions, but the point is it's making sure the students are paying attention. The data from this could also be used to evaluate the teacher's performance. And then we have products like these EEG headbands that monitor electrical signals from the brain, another example from China. But before we assume that's the only place it's happening, we should bear in mind that these headsets were actually developed in the US. And that's another example from Europe. In any case, there's little evidence that these headbands actually work. Another example is the automated essay grading, which is designed to reduce teacher workload. We all know that marking assignments can be time-consuming and sometimes boring for teachers. But the reality is, marking is also a key opportunity for teachers to learn about their students' individual capabilities. If teachers are no longer involved in the marking of assignments, then there's a whole range of information they're going to miss out on. In addition, there's currently little evidence that automatic writing evaluation for summative assessment is effective. Instead, these systems are typically trivial, reductive, inaccurate, unfair, and secretive. Finally, what about the so-called personalized learning? A metaphor that I find useful involves school buses and Uber taxis. The idea is that the school bus represents classroom-based learning, with all the students on the same bus together, travelling along the same route to the same bus station. On the other hand, the argument goes, intelligent tutoring systems are the Uber taxis, with each Uber taxi taking each student along their own personalised route, which has got to be better, right? But the reality is that most intelligent tutoring systems effectively take students to the same bus station as the school bus. They tend to be designed to prepare students for passing exams. In other words, only the learning pathway is being personalised, not the learning destination. I would have thought that for learning to be genuinely personalised, it should give students agency over their own learning. It should empower them to fulfil their personal ambitions and potential, to do what psychologists call self-actualize. The point is, we do not take Ubers because we want to get to the bus station using a personalised route. We're using Uber because it takes us exactly to where we as individuals want to go. My chosen destination is different to your chosen destination. In summary, there are many implications of AI in education that we need to take properly into account. Issues around transparency, unintended consequences, autonomy, trust, sharing information, and many other things besides. We also have to recognise that for every positive application of AI in education, there's always a negative. Intelligent tutoring systems offer personalised learning, but they also lack human interaction and limited agency. Emotion detection helps move students from negative to positive emotions to enhance learning, but also compromises privacy. Continuous assessment, no more exams, but continuous surveillance. An automatic writing evaluation, giving good formative assessment, but inaccurate summative assessment. Finally, I want to mention two important publications. Firstly, the Beijing Consensus on Artificial Intelligence in Education, which is available on the UNESCO site. And secondly, AI in Education UNESCO Guidance for Policymakers, which is due to be published any day. In summary, AI is likely to have a major impact on education. It has the potential to transform education for good, but also for bad. It's important that educators, learning scientists, and policymakers engage with computer scientists and AI developers to ensure that AI in education meets real needs. At the same time, we should be bold and not limit our imagination to existing practices. And we shouldn't be seduced by the lure of exciting technologies. Instead, we should always start and end with the learning. Here are some further reading for you. The first two are available online, and the third one is a recent book. And thank you very much for listening.
Dr. Wayne Holmes, thank you very much. Three panelists with diverse backgrounds. Professor Boyer Kim at Seoul National University, Harry Peck, co-founder of SeedCap, and Chung-Yeol Cho, CEO of Seoul Digital EdTech. Each discussant will have about 10 minutes, and we will have a response from Dr. Wayne Holmes, followed by another round of discussion with a few questions from audience members. Professor Kim Boyer, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes, for your inspiring presentation. Today, as a panelist, I would like to share my evaluation experience in Vietnam. The Education Commission's Education Workforce Initiative, chaired by Professor Joo Lee. They are doing pioneering country project in Vietnam. So I would like to share my experience in Vietnam. So basically, Education Commission works with Vietnam Ministry of Education and Training and Arizona State University to implement ALEX in middle school for 7th grade math curriculum. So it's a small pilot project, but they think that the evaluation is very important. So from the beginning, we worked with the Education Commission and Arizona State University. So basically, the Education Commission and Vietnam Ministry of Education and Training select 4 middle schools, 2 in Hanoi, 2 schools in Ho Chi Minh, and basically implement the ALEX developed by McGraw-Hill for their 7th grade math curriculum. So the Arizona State University trained the teacher, math teacher, to implement this ALEX system into their classroom. And today, I'm going to share our preliminary evaluation result on student outcome. So it's very interesting to see that despite the small size of the pilot study, we find a very huge treatment effect. So after 1 semester, basically we implemented the ALEX for 2019 first semester, 1 semester. And after that, we measure students' math assessments. And we find out the students' math score in the 3-month school compared to 3 comparison school, their math score improved by more than 0.6 standard deviation, which can translate into almost 2 years of schooling. It's a huge impact size compared to other literature. For example, MindSpark in India, they reported that the MindSpark AI education project can improve the students' math score in India by 0.37 standard deviation. So even though our study in Vietnam is a small pilot study, but we find out the huge treatment effect size, 0.6 standard deviation. And interesting thing is that we want to test the nature of adaptive learning of Alex. So even though we are working with 7th grade students, we also ask 7th grade math question, 6th grade, 5th grade, the previous year math question as well. And we find out that, yes, students, the learning gain comes from not only from their own grade, 7th grade, but their gain is much bigger in the previous year, 6th grade and 5th grade. So that makes sense. That's the kind of adaptive learning mechanism of AI system. And another interesting thing is that we find out that we just divided our student sample into 4 groups. From their baseline math assessment performance, we have top 25% and the middle 50% and bottom 25%. And interestingly, yes, if the adaptive learning works for everybody, then we should find out the treatment effect both from the high-performing student as well as low-performing student. That's what we found. So the top 25% student, their math gain is about 0.4 standard deviations. And in the middle, 50% student, their gain is slightly bigger, 0.6 standard deviation. But what we think very interesting is that the bottom 25% student, the lower performing student, their gain is almost 0.9 standard deviation, which is more than double than the math gains of top 25%. So it seems to us that this Alex system, the adaptive learning system, works really well for lower performing students. So it's very efficiently work for the downward remedial education for lower performing student. Of course, it works for the higher performing student as well. And one interesting anecdotal evidence is that we believe that the treatment effect size for higher performance student is about 0.4 standard deviation. It could be much bigger. If the Alex diagnosed this higher performing student, then they could have accelerated their math learning. Even though they are 7th grade, they could have provided 8th grade, 9th grade. But actually, we didn't ask the question for the above grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. At the same time, Vietnamese Ministry of Education, they said that, please do not go over this acceleration education content. So basically, they put some cap. That's why we find a very bigger impact for the remedial education for lower performing students. But if we deleted this kind of capping for higher performing students, we could have ended up with much higher treatment effect size for higher performance student as well. And so still, it is very preliminary result. However, with this, the evaluation result, we hope that these results can support for Vietnamese Ministry of Education's decision to scale up this AI-assisted adaptive learning system into a larger Vietnamese school setting. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Real Kim. Ms. Harry Fair, now it's your turn.
Hi, Professor Ms. Harry, and I'm a co-founder of the SIPCOP. The SIPCOP means that it's a social education entrepreneurs TVchosun, and we are in the form of a cooperative organization here in Korea. And there are about 35 companies as our member right now, and then most of the companies are formed to help the public education system, especially teachers right now. And thanks to the former Minister of Education, Lee, Juho, and we had, before then, we had really closed education system, so it was really hard for us to approach and go into the school in Korea because the role of the teacher was really big, and the teachers didn't feel the needs of the support from outside, and because they only need to teach their own curriculum and very centralized curriculum from the government. However, these days, due to the technology development and also the needs of the developing skills needed for the social skills, like the communications and including the non-cognitive skills, they are seeking actually many players, education players from outside. And I have been actually traveling like most of the countries around here in Korea, and we have been connecting with the teachers, like more than 300 teachers in Korea, and we are talking many things about the AI education, and they are very interested in education system as well. However, there are too many obstacles and tasks to overcome in Korean public education system. And I'd like to point out that the first thing is the infrastructure problem. That there are, like, Korea is well known for the infrastructure and IT technology. However, it is very closed, and then the networks are not open to the students, especially to the students, so they cannot have an access to the internet access. And secondly, and students are not allowed to use their devices, like even the smartphones. They are taken away, most of them. And even they don't have enough PCs or laptops to provide the students. That's really a big problem. And also, secondly, the teachers in Korea, they think they are very frustrated because they think they need to teach and transfer the knowledge from them to the students rather than organize or facilitate the classroom. So they think it's really hard for them to let the AI or the technology to teach the students and access the students in a knowledge-based area, and they are very confused about it. However, these days there are many new and young teachers in Korea, and they think they are actually more excited because they can try new things. However, there are another obstacles that I would like to point out here is that due to the very centralized public education system and the impact of the government policy is really big to schools in Korea, and teachers are focused on the fixed learning outcome. As you pointed out, we cannot personalize our students to learn, and the teachers are very busy to focus on the fixed learning outcome, and they don't have enough time to access each student as a personalized learning for their aim. And this actually produces really big problem because the students have no dream. They don't know what they are really good at. They cannot find their potentials, and so hopefully we could adapt the AI education system in the public education system and let teachers actually focus more to discuss with the students and find their personalized learning outcome and the potentials and what they really would like to do when they grow up and stuff. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bakheri. Now we'll turn to CEO Jung-Hyun. Okay, so he will make a presentation in Korean and the translator will translate in English. So please go ahead.
보이나요? 떴을까요? 안녕하세요. 서울 폴리테크닉 교육원의 조충렬입니다.
Hello, I'm Chung-Hyul Cho from Seoul Polytech Lifelong Education Institution in Korea.
코로나가 뉴스를 덮기 전에 AI, 모빌리티, 드론 등 4차 산업을 키워드로 하는 뉴스가 선점하고 있었습니다.
Before the news of coronavirus covered the headlines, keywords such as AI technology, mobility, and drone that represents the fourth industrial revolution covered the news in all directions.
이러한 자리를 만들어주어 한국의 AI와 원격 교육을 진단하고 한 번 더 고민하는 시간을 주신 TV조선에 감사드립니다.
I would like to express my gratitude to tvchosun for organizing such an event to discuss about these issues.
제가 준비한 내용은 다음과 같으며 AI 러닝 그리고 교육의 위기라는 제목으로 이렇게 10여 분 내외 진행하도록 하겠습니다.
The topic that I prepared is as following: AI, e-learning, and crisis of education. I'll try my best to finish in 10-minute mark.
4차 혁명은 우리에게 위기일까요? 기회일까요?
Is the fourth industrial revolution a crisis or an opportunity?
모든 혁명적 기술 분야는 융합을 통해 파괴적 혁신을 가져오고 있습니다.
All revolutionary industries bring disruptive innovation through convergence.
기존 전통적 리더는 재화나 서비스를 잘 만드는 기업이었으며
Traditional leaders are those that are great at making goods or services.
전통적 리더의 경쟁자들은 동일한 산업에 뛰어든 뉴페이스였습니다.
Competition of traditional leaders are the new faces that have entered the same industry.
그 시기는 장인의 시대였다고 저는 한마디로 말하고 싶습니다.
In short, I would like to describe those time as the era of craftsmanship.
그러나 지금 리더를 위협하는 경쟁자들은 혁명적 기술로 무장한 파괴적 테크 기업들입니다.
However, this is a time where competitors of traditional leaders are challenged by disruptive innovators heavily armed with revolutionary technology.
21세기는 모든 산업 분야를 혁명적 테크 기업이 주도하고 있습니다.
21st century is an industrial era led by tech companies.
파괴적 혁신은 경쟁 분야만 파괴하는 것이 아니라 예측 못했던 시장까지 파괴하는 결과를 초래했습니다.
Disruptive innovation not only rattled the competitions, but also brought disruption to the unsuspecting markets.
예를 들자면 스마트폰은 소니로 대표되는 카메라, 아이리버로 대표되는 MP3, 닌텐도로 대표되는 게임기 시장을 파괴했습니다.
To name an example, camera industry leader Sony, MP3 makers iRiver, and Nintendo in the gaming industry have all been destroyed by the emergence of smartphones.
4차 산업혁명은 갈등을 야기하지만 적응하지 못하면 생존이 불가능합니다.
The fourth industrial revolution causes conflict, but without adaptation, survival seems impossible.
저희 교육 분야에도 마찬가지입니다.
This is the same for education industry.
고객은 거리와 공간을 초월해서 가장 합리적인 서비스를 구매하고 있습니다.
Customers are transcending the boundary of time and space to acquire the most reasonable services.
제가 속해 있는 학점은행제 시장도 이미 2013년도에 원격 교육기관이 전통적 오프라인 교육기관을 압도하고 있습니다.
Since 2013, the Lifelong Education Institute that I am part of is also overwhelming the education market, pushing out the traditional offline-based education.
2012년도 상위 매출 기관 30개 중 27개 기관이 원격 기관이었습니다.
Of the top 30 lifelong education institutions, 27 of them were distance learning platforms.
해외 사례에서도 마찬가지입니다.
This is the same for the global education industry.
미국의 캘리포니아 사례는 원격 교육의 효과성을 나타냅니다.
The case of California teaches the effectiveness of distance education.
중국의 진중시 사례는 이 원격 교육을 통한 사회적 역할과 효과를 나타냅니다.
For the case of Jinzhou City in China, they emphasize on the social role of both online education.
미국의 온라인 유치원 사례는 갈등을 나타내고요.
The case of online kindergarten in the U.S. shows conflicts.
캐나다의 온타리오주 사례는 노동시장을 파괴하는 사례를 나타냅니다.
And the case of Ontario in Canada shows the implications of even destroying the teacher labor market.
호주의 사례는 AI와 원격 교육이 융합됐을 때 장점을 나타내는 사례입니다.
The Australian case demonstrates the combined merits of both AI technology and distance learning.
이러닝과 에듀테크의 큰 차이점이 이렇습니다. 통신망 및 디바이스 기술이 주도했던 이러닝은 학습자 중심 시공간을 초월한 표준화된 소비에서
E-learning driven by communication network and device technology as a standardized services transcends the boundary of student-centered time and space.
AI와 가상현실 기술인 AR, VR이 주도되는 에듀테크, 학습자 분석을 통한 학습자 개별 시공간을 초월한 맞춤 공부기라 할 수 있겠습니다.
Education technology, which is powered by artificial intelligence and virtual reality, can be said to be a customized supply that transcends each learner, time and space.
저희의 현실입니다. 코로나로 인해 비교적 보수적 입장이었던 공교육, 초중고 대학에서도 원격을 적극적 도입과 고민되어지는 당면한 현실을 맞이하고 있습니다.
Public education sectors that were relatively conservative is facing the reality of actively promoting and considering the distance learning.
저는 이제 한국도 이러닝의 시대에서 AI와 가상현실 기술이 주도하는 에듀테크로의 패러다임의 전환이 이루어지지 않는다면 생존을 장담할 수 없다고 이야기하고 싶습니다.
I would like to argue that Korea cannot guarantee survival in the era of e-learning without a paradigm shift to the edu-technology and virtual reality technology.
네, 이런 고민을 할 수 있는 TV조선에게 자리를 만들어주신 TV조선에게 마지막으로 감사드립니다.
I'd like to thank again to tvchosun for organizing this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cho. So we have heard three discussions, and first, Professor Buyeo Kim shared his experience, particularly on his study, impact evaluation study, on Vietnam prototype project of adaptive and active learning, and although it's preliminary result, but he shared surprising and really amazing performance outcomes for the AI assisted adaptive learning system. And Ms. Beccari talked about her experience working with teachers, and talked about how Korean teachers are having a lot of difficulties in project-based learning or personalized learning because there are too much burden on teachers' shoulders. So she hopes that AI education could reduce the burden on teachers. I think it's a major point. And Mr. Jo Chung-yeol talked about his experience in the area of lifelong learning and how AI and distance learning could change the business models of lifelong learning in Korea. So I think we heard from diverse perspectives about Korean situation, landscape of how we can embrace AI education. On the top of three discussions views, I just share my personal impression of your presentation. I really found it interesting that your book has an extensive survey of AI education landscape, and you found out that there is not a single case for teacher-facing AI education yet, and this really suggests that we do need a healthy ecosystem that AI technology could support teachers. So that's what I found very, very interesting. And I also found that we do need we do really need much active discussion about the ethical issues of AI education, because I really found that these ethical issues have not emerged yet, but could be really important for the future. So this is our the discussion about your presentation. So now we come back to you for a response. Dr. Wei Hong, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good.
So, to begin with, I want to say congratulations about the work in Vietnam. I would love to learn more about this project. For me, there are nevertheless some issues which I would love to discuss with you in more detail at some point. So the first thing is that we are talking about a very small part of the curriculum, and what we haven't seen is these tools being expanded more broadly. But I also wonder, I think you mentioned, I think I heard you mention that for the children who were at the lower end of the ability, they made really interesting development. And for me, that's a fabulous use of this technology, because in a sense, these students, they've been in school for many years and the teachers speak louder, but the students still don't learn. So if we can find another way of supporting them, then I think that is fabulous. But I wonder about, exactly how long these technologies can work in this kind of context. So I think you said you've been using it for 1 or maybe 2 semesters, and that's quite a short time in a student's life. My concern is when the assumption becomes, well, these technologies are so good, they make such good achievement, so when a child starts school at 5, they start using this technology and they keep using it until they're 17. And that completely undermines, for me, the really crucial human parts of being involved in education. So I love the use of the technology as a supportive intervention, but not as the mainstream. And I think, as if I also understand it, this is part of the, and I'll get it around the wrong way, high-tech, high-touch approach, so that it's being used to complement human teaching. So for me, that's very exciting. And when it's seen in that way, where it's not to replace the teachers, the support, and there's this balance between these two, I think is fundamentally important. And as I mentioned to Juho, that this was the first time I'd heard of such an approach. So I definitely want to learn more about it. But to pick up on our second speaker, and I'm very sorry I didn't get your name. But I completely agree with you that a lot of these approaches are very much about knowledge transfer. You know, we know what the students need to learn, and so long as we plug them into the right system and give them enough time, they will learn it. Well, again, you know, there's some truth in that. I'm sure we all know that practice makes good. But again, while it's a useful approach, a useful tool, again, I would be worried about it becoming the main approach. You see, when we imagine classrooms from 100 years ago and more recently in many countries, we think of the children in their desks in rows with the teacher at the front. But the new paradigm, with some of these systems are suggesting, is that we still have the students in rows, but instead of the teacher being at the front, we have a laptop on each of the students' desks. And so what we're not doing is taking advantage of the power of students working together collaboratively. So that's why in my presentation, I talk about collaborative learning. You know, instead of developing tools that force a student to work individually, that's why the students from the Facebook experiment weren't happy. Why aren't we building tools that help students to work collaboratively? And that's not just in terms of the classroom where it makes perfect sense. They're all in a room together. So why are we separating them when they're in a room together? But it also makes sense in distance education. So I understand. So I used to be at the Open University in the UK, which is one of the leading distance education universities. And yes, students do work independently. So yes, tools that support independent work are useful. But equally, the amazing thing about these technologies is it could be connecting these students. So these students, when they are physically separate, we could be connecting them and they could be working collaboratively. I also wanted to come back. I thought a very interesting point was made about infrastructure, and some of the conferences I've attended where we're looking at putting AI into classrooms. Well, actually, in many of the countries, and I know Korea is pretty advanced, but there are a lot of countries that had almost zero infrastructure, particularly in rural areas. So to suddenly think about putting AI in seems to be a bit, you know, the horse before the cart. And what we need to be getting right is the infrastructure for standard things. But also, there's a lot of examples of where people get overly excited about this technology, but perhaps the money will be better spent on more teachers and more training for teachers. So the final thing I'd just like to mention is, well, two final things. One, the notion of personalized learning. Well, most professional teachers do personalized learning. That's what it means to be a human teacher, a good human teacher, is they do personalize and they do work towards helping students achieve different outcomes, which I think is very important. But the notion of some of these tools being used to relieve some burdens from the shoulders of teachers, I agree with, but I just think we have to be extremely careful as to which burdens. Because the example I gave of marking, for example, most people who are not teachers think, well, yeah, marking, that's a great place to get rid of work from teachers. But actually, for teachers, and I've been a teacher all my professional life, marking is so important. It's when you learn most about your students. It's time consuming, it can be boring, but nevertheless, it's absolutely fundamental to teaching. I don't like even separating it from teaching. It's a fundamental part of teaching. So yes, I agree, but perhaps it's using the AI to develop other approaches. So Juho, can I just give you one last example? There's a project that I'm trying to get going. I mentioned the notion of using AI for continuous assessment in order to get rid of the examinations, in order to get some kind of better quality assessment of what our students have actually learned, which examinations don't really do, as we know. But I also mentioned the downside of that is that if we're going to use AI to continually monitor our students, then that's the same as surveillance. And I'm not particularly keen on having more surveillance in our schools and our classrooms. But the project I'm looking at is where the teachers in a particular school that I'm working with, the teachers have iPads, and during their lessons, at one point in each lesson, while the students are working on some task, the teacher just looks at their iPad, which has the names of the students, and they quickly look at each student in turn and just decide, has the student achieved the competency? Are they almost achieving, or have they not achieved it? And they just go first person, second student, third student, fourth. So they can do that task in about 30 seconds, the whole class. Now that set of data on its own is useless. But if they do that every class over the course of a semester, then that package of data can be very powerful. And what we're doing is that the AI is not doing the assessing, it's the human tutor, the teacher, who's doing the assessing based on their knowledge of the student, their knowledge of their subject, their knowledge of teaching. And all we're using AI to do is to take some of the grunt work out of that, so that we can develop these rather more detailed and nuanced assessments of these individual students. So whether this project will work remains to be seen, but I think it has great, exciting potential.
Thanks for your very wise and thoughtful feedbacks on the discussions. And I also like your new project exploring how to help teachers and how to students collaborate. I think there are a lot more interesting areas and important areas that private companies in utilizing AI haven't explored yet. And that's why I think we do need a good ecosystem, global and local, to encourage those innovators working more closely with AI developers and so forth. And I perfectly agree with your ideas. And I really do hope that we Korean partners can work with your team or your institute for this interesting area. Thank you very much. And we have another round of discussion. So maybe we can start with the questions from the floor. So I have 3 questions I got from the floor. Question number 1, teachers at schools do not just teach academics. They also serve as role models for students and often take on the role of guiding students beyond the teaching of academics. How do you see us fulfilling this role if the current school system moves away from the more traditional modes of learning towards AI education? I think this question came from a teacher, right? A Korean teacher. So that's question 1. And question 2 is quite closely related to question 1. As AI education develops, do you believe that face-to-face, in-person education can be replaced by the technology or not? That's the question 2. Question 3, what is the goal of AI education? It's quite a fundamental question. What should students learn from AI education? So that's all 3 questions I got. Maybe 3 discussions. If you have anything you bring to this discussion, maybe feel free to give your own idea about this.
Can I respond to Dr. Hom's comments before we answer 3 questions from the floor? Yes, although I highlighted the evaluation outcomes on the math, which is the high-tech component. In Vietnam Education Commission does emphasize high-tech component as well as high-touch component. That's why we call high-touch, high-tech intervention in Vietnam. So we're also evaluating the high-touch components, whether students become more engaging in the interaction with classmates, whether they are more engaging in the interaction with the teacher. We're also looking at, although it's very suggestive evidence, but we found out that students become more agreeable from their Big 5 personality test. So yes, you pointed out very important issue that in a small setting like us, one semester intervention for 4 schools, we find out very strong the math improvement. That's a partial equilibrium outcome. But what if we expanded this project into whole curriculum in the nationwide? Then maybe the outcomes could be completely different. So we call this like a general equilibrium problems in economics. So I totally agree. That's why Education Commission and Vietnamese Ministry of Education, they emphasize both high-tech AI part as well as the high-touch active learning part. So, and the second thing I would like to emphasize is that what makes our study differentiate from other studies is that we're actually working with teacher. So as you pointed out, it's very difficult to work on teacher. That's why we do not have many evidence on the impact of AI system on teacher. For example, the Indian MindSpark, they didn't work with teacher. They didn't work in the school system because it's so hard to coordinate. That's why they work in their own NGO. But the Education Commission, from the beginning, worked with the Ministry of Education in Vietnam, actually with a school system. So we have another separate study, the impact of Alex, adaptive learning on teacher side. So that's another ongoing project. So I totally agree with your point that we do need both high-tech as well as high-touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything to respect?
Yes. Professor Holmes, thanks for your feedback. And I agree with you that the practice makes good and teachers need practice. And I think the main reason why teachers are having difficult times accepting the different technology and AI education is that because they don't have their own experience. And as you pointed out in this, Professor Lee agreed that there is no AI ed fit for teachers right now. So I think it's really urgent that we need to develop the AI ed for the teachers. And I also believe that the universities, colleges actually training the teachers need to adapt the AI ed to train the teachers. And thank you very much for your time.
CEO Junior, we heard from Dr. Wayne Holmes that maybe there is high need for students to work collectively through the aid of AI education. So maybe one of the promising area of embracing AI education in the future could be to utilize AI in making students work together and learn together. And maybe you have many experience in the business and especially in the adult learning and higher education. And do you think you agree with his vision?
예.
한국말로 하고 보여드리겠습니다.
AI를 통해서 활동하는 학생들
가장 저희가 이 현장에서 바라봤을 때 이제 AI를 통해서 소통 학습에 대한 부분을 어떤 형태로 가장 생각할 수 있느냐를 보면 학습자들이 이제
For example, in this kind of setting, right? You can connect to the expert from the UK, for example. So we can really make students from the distant places to talk together, to work together through this kind of learning platform. So maybe you have that kind of vision about utilizing those the platform technologies or AI technologies.
제가 잘 알고 있는 저희 현장 얘기를 좀 먼저 드리겠습니다. 저희가 이제 학습자들이 보통 평생교육 자원들이 저희 플랫폼에서 공부를 합니다. 네, 플랫폼에서 공부를 하게 되는데 이 플랫폼에서 공부하게 됐을 때 저희한테 가장 어려운 부분은 이제 그 학습자들의 수준별 차이가 상당히 어렵습니다. 수준.
Yes, from the on-site point of view, we practice lifelong education in Korea, and the difficult matter is that it's very difficult to determine each student's skill and level they're at.
가장 수준별 차이가 가장 어렵고 그것에 대한 부분이 사실 저희는 어떻게 보면 인터랙티브한 강의가 아니라 이미 찍어놓은 강의를 가지고 수업을 진행해야 하기 때문에 편차의 차이가 상당히 크게 나타날 수 있습니다.
Because of the individual differences in understanding and skill sets, we have to use a video that has been pre-recorded for students because not all of them will be able to follow the collaborative understanding of the classroom.
그리고 저희 안에서 그 클래스 안에서도 과제나 아니면 과제 또는 그 외에 다른 학습들을 같이 하는 협동 학습들이 있습니다.
But within the classrooms, we have assignments and tasks that we provide for the students so that they can work on collaborative experience.
그렇게 협동 학습을 하게 됐을 때 저희가 고민하는 것들 중에 하나는 어떻게 보면 성적 중심으로 해서 성적 중심으로 묶는 것이냐, 그룹핑을 하는 것이냐.
One of the concerns that we have while we operate this sort of collaborative method is, do we determine the student's outcome through the grading system or the GPA?
성적 중심으로 묶거나 아니면 잘하는 사람과 못하는 사람들을 섞어서 그룹핑을 하는 것이냐.
Or do we mix up the students that are doing well in the classroom settings, or students that are a little bit suffering in the classroom settings? Do we mix them up and come up with the average outcome?
그런 모델을 통해서 AI를 접목을 해서 어떻게 하면 학습 효과를 그룹핑을 하는 학습 효과를 극대화할 것인가에 대한 저희도 내부적인 고민을 하고 있습니다.
So this is one of our internal concerns. How do we manage the AI system and technology to be able to collaborate the students' differences in the classroom setting?
그리고 또한 이런 수준별 차이가 있는 학습자들에게
And another thing to point out is to the students that have differences, individual students that have differences in skill sets.
상담을 해줄 수 있는 교수님들, 저희는 운영 교수라고 합니다.
We have a professor, we call them operational professors, that can consult to each one of the students.
그런 운영 교수님들을 배정하는 부분에 있어서도 저희는 AI가 고민해야 되는 부분이라고 생각합니다.
And we believe that one of the concerns that we can have for AI technology to help these teachers and professors help to determine what professors that can be good for each one of the students, the good matching.
그리고 더 나아가 교수님들 간의 협업에서도
Furthermore, within the collaborative network between the professors and consultants,
그 수준별로 이렇게 어떻게 보면 교수님들의 어떤 수준이라고는 조금 그렇긴 한데 수준별로 그룹핑하는 부분에 대해서도 고민을 하고 있습니다.
and we also recognize that there's differences in between the professors and the consultants and the tutors, and how do we also deal with the levels of the differences.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Wayne Holmes, any response or feedback?
Yeah, sure. So I think that the problems that we just heard about, and also the idea of the teachers needing training and support, and that complexity, and the teachers have different starting points, different interests, different competencies, different expertises. So one of the other ways in which this could be developed, and there's nothing like this at the moment, but I think it is something that really should be considered. We're trying to get funding for a similar project to support teachers in sub-Saharan Africa. And that is the use of what's known as collective intelligence. So the AI's purpose would be to support all of the teachers or the professors to be able to access the collective intelligence of their colleagues. So in other words, any one individual teacher might not know how to do something, might have some difficulty with something, but by using the AI technology, they should hopefully be able to draw upon the knowledge and expertise of all the teachers in their community. So I think this is one way in which this could be approached. But just to emphasize that most of the, as has been mentioned, most of the work, most of the investment in terms of time and money has all been about, well, how can we do the teacher's job? Whereas I think I would like to see more time and effort and expertise put on how do we help teachers do their jobs better? And I think that it's a completely different angle. Now, the reason why most of the technologies are about doing the teacher's job is because in comparison, that's relatively easy to do. And this is what's been researched in universities for the past 40 plus years. And nobody has sat around and said, look, what are the real problems in a classroom, be it in a school or a distance university or a standing university? What are the problems? And you, this evening, or this morning in your case, you've identified some of these problems. We need to encourage our computer scientist colleagues to focus on developing technologies that can address those kinds of issues, which so far they have not. But to go back to the original questions, one of the areas, most of the, do you remember I showed you my long list of all the intelligent tutoring systems, and one of them was Alex and others were Squirrel and etc. Most of those focus on mathematics. Some of them are a bit broader than mathematics, but most of them focus on mathematics. Why? Because mathematics is relatively easy to code into AI systems, and it's relatively easy to identify when this person is correct or incorrect. When we start looking at more complex issues, such as literature or the 21st century skills, collaboration, criticality, cooperation, all those kinds of things, and social and emotional learning, it becomes really complex. And so that's why there aren't any tools looking at these areas. But hopefully, that's another area that I think is important for the AI community to begin to look at. Having said that, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, I was in New Delhi at the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Education and Peace and Sustainable Development. And the topic of conversation was AI and social and emotional learning. And it was a really interesting discussion. And I think the one conclusion was AI should keep out of social and emotional learning because it's just going in the wrong direction. And what we really need to be focusing on is the humanity of education. Education and learning is about people coming together to learn. And a lot of the tools that are currently been developed actually dehumanize the education process, in my opinion. But there's lots of opportunity here. So I don't want to give the impression I'm against AI in education. It's what I've been doing for a long time. I'm very much in favor. But what I'm against is some of the existing examples, which I think are just shooting in the wrong direction. Final question that was mentioned was, what is the goal? And I think this is absolutely fundamental. And I think what is the goal of the AI has to follow what we believe is the goal of the education. What are we trying to do in education? How are we trying to prepare our students? You mentioned lifelong learning. I think is fundamentally important. And for me, lifelong learning starts from cradle to grave, from K through to when somebody can do no more in their life. And it's fundamental that we are able to help people self-actualize, to develop, to become the best people that they can become. So Juho, you become the best Juho in the world. You know, I become the best Wayne that I can be. And for me, that's what education should be all about. Now, as part of that process, we do need to assess, we do need to accredit. But we shouldn't allow the accreditation to determine the education. It should be the other way around. The education should determine what accreditation we do. And it should also, in our context in this session, the education that we want for all of our students from K through to retirement and beyond has to be agreed first, and then that should determine what AI technologies we believe are appropriate. And to say my gut feeling is it's AI technologies that support teachers to be the best teachers they can be, and AI technologies that support students to be the best that they can be, but not AI technologies that try to do their jobs for them. And the final thing I mentioned that was mentioned earlier about knowledge transmission in particular, I think that's a really interesting point. And the reality is that outside of the world of education, AI is very good at knowledge. So if the AI, if we continue to train our students in just the knowledge transmission bit, then actually what they're learning is redundant, because that's what the AI is very good at. What the AI is still very poor at are things like making value judgments. Humans are still very good at that, but we still need to engage with our students to help them become better with that. So there's no point teaching our students what the AI can do. So instead, we should be focusing on what humans do and what we're really good at doing, which is values and empathy and social, emotional and criticality and all those really important things. And I think that's what will be better for our students and for the coming decades, for sure. I hope that's answered some of your questions, but for me, it's been a fabulous discussion, and I very much look forward to it continuing. I definitely want to hear more about the work in Vietnam, and also I would love to hear more about the lifelong learning and the work with teachers. I think this is all amazing stuff. So thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this. It's been fantastic.
Excellent feedbacks and sharing with us about your very, very useful insights about AI education. Thank you very much, particularly for your participating in this seminar at very late time. Thank you very much again. Thank you. So I think we have a very good discussion, and we learned a lot from the leading expert in this area, from Dr. Wayne Holmes. I think we have any final comment or? Okay, then this concludes session 1. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
나중에